We are live now.
Hello,
Hi, everybody.
Internet.
We don't have any viewers because people are confused about how to do this. So let me see if let me send a message to Ethan and tell him we're live now. Why is this? Yeah, all they have to do is hit the
They just have to hit play, right?
play button. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sign in to view this video. All right, well, that's not right. We're live now. You should be able to see it.
And even if we can't activate the Q&A feature, I think that might be on Michael's end. We can pay attention.
Okay, so Ethan just says he can see and hear me, so all is well. So hopefully that's our first. Okay, great. Hey.
Mahad?
Hey,
Hey.
I had some internet difficulties, but I'm on my phone. So
All right.
I don't know if it'll cut in and out, but
Okay. All right, so all is well. Ethan's online watching. Supposedly there are 23 people that are viewing. They are not showing up. No, there's a few going live right now. I can see them going live right now.
Okay.
Well, I'm having fun just hanging out, guys.
All right.
Brought to you by Google.
So yeah, so let's get this started. How do you guys want to start this?
you
Well,
can just ask questions, right?
people time to put their questions in. So I guess that's in the Q&A function. We're all pretty new to this Google Hangout thing, so yeah, I think if you click on the Q&A button on the side of your screen, you should be able to put in questions. And I think everything is pretty much fair game. You know, what's going to happen in what's going on later. You know, who are you people? What's with that funny haircut? All of those questions are on the table. I'll introduce myself. I'm Benjamin Harrison. I'm directing the film Shoot the Moon, which is centered around the efforts that Michael and LiftPort are making to do this big test that they kickstarted a couple years ago. And with me are obviously Michael Lane, president of LiftPort Group, as well as Mahad Ibrahim and Alexis Santos, who are producers on the film. Yeah. And Alexis has a stuffed space shuttle, which I'm very jealous of.
Well, it's somewhat stuff. It's filled with air. It's more of inflatable, but.
Oh, it's inflatable. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's more throwable.
And after a while, if I don't inflate it, it starts to turn into Shamu, where his starts to because it's infinite activity, of course. That's what happens to space shuttles when they're in confined spaces.
Yeah. They do make stuffed space shuttles, though.
I believe it.
So let's start this with a little bit more introduction. Mahad, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved with the documentary, and then we'll switch to Alexis. And by the way, we're getting notifications that they don't see Q&A features, but folks, we can actually see your questions if you just post them on the Hangout. Apparently, we are getting notified that this feature is disabled, so I'm not really sure what that's all about.
All right. I guess as the questions come in, I'll just take a few seconds to introduce myself. So I'm Mahad Ibrahim. So I kind of came into this project. I've been interested in space since a very early age, and I've worked with Ben on many other projects in sort of the film and media space. And Ben and I were taking a walk in New York City. We were talking about sort of next projects, and Ben brought me up to speed on all the work you were doing, Michael. And I was like, that is amazing. We must make this movie. And so then we started talking more together, and then we talked to you about it. And here we are. In terms of my day job, I run so in the creative sector, creative/tech sector. So obviously this is in my wheelhouse, but I love telling stories, and I think this is an amazing story to be told.
And Alexis, how did
Well, you froze a bit there, Michael, but I can figure out what you were trying to ask. But I first met Ben when I was working at Engadget as a contributing editor, writing about all sorts of stuff, and occasionally space. He was our video guy there, and eventually this year I got involved later on in the project when I found out he needed a hand. So I've been emailing folks, scheduling stuff, doing copywriting, all sorts of stuff, and I guess I should fit in how I was born and raised in Florida, so the space shuttle launches were just look out my backyard and I'd be able to see the thing, and I'd go out every once in a while and see the space shuttles launch. So it's ever since then I've been infatuated with space and space exploration. So I would really like to see a space elevator, and so we're here to hopefully see the beginnings of that.
Alexis, I think you just made everybody extremely jealous.
Look out my backyard.
Think about us. Yeah, holy mackerel.
To be fair, it was like a little tiny red dot that burst through the clouds from like this far away. But
Doesn't matter. Sounds super cool to me.
Most of us got to see.
There's always this game of watching a launch on TV and then thinking, okay, I can wait about 15 seconds because it's still not high enough to see outside, and then bolt outside to see it. Okay, yeah, now I can see it.
Right on. So why this video? Why this documentary? I mean, of all the things you guys, what's your relationship to LiftPort and Kickstarter, and how'd you guys get in contact in the first place?
Well, I think Alexis and I both actually backed your campaign.
Yep.
And then we, because we were working for a big media company at the time, sort of had the luxury of following up. And I actually had the opportunity to take a camera crew out to Seattle and meet you, Michael. And I filmed a 10 or 12-minute piece for the Engadget show, which I was directing and producing at the time. It was probably my favorite thing I did for the Engadget show because I was really interested in the space elevator, and I was really inspired by the idea of people who were just kind of taking matters into their own hands and trying to make one. So it kind of stuck with me, and it wound up being the experiment hadn't happened yet, and every time a new boss man would come on board at Engadget, I would say, like, we can be cool, I'll do whatever you want as long as you'll promise me that I can fly out to Seattle when the space elevator experiment happens to film that, because that's all I really care about. And sooner or later I wound up parting ways with Engadget, amicably, but parting ways nonetheless. And then I was really freaked out because I was like, how am I going to get to film this experiment if I don't work for a big media company that can bankroll my trip? So I got to talking to Mahad about it, and we decided that we wanted to commit ourselves to making a feature film. And I think that it's wound up being a much bigger and more nuanced story than we thought it would be when we first embarked on it, because LiftPort has given us really kind of totally unfettered access to what they're up to, and that's been really cool because we've kind of seen all of that stuff that inspired me and some of the stuff that goes along with it. The sometimes science is really hard and there are failures, and that's kind of part of the process. And I think a lot of companies would be a little bit reticent to show that kind of thing, but I think that LiftPort has a really cool attitude about, the process being important for public consumption. And I think that comes from the fact that they're kind of a crowd-funded concern. If I had to guess.
So there's been some frustration, anger, confusion about whether you guys are just shills for LiftPort, whether you guys are just a front for LiftPort, whether you guys are doing a puff piece, a propaganda piece. Why don't you tell me what you have in mind, and ask some of the and talk about some of the questions that you have asked, and some of the answers you expect from me.
Well, I think that when I called you initially to ask about whether you'd be comfortable with us doing a documentary, kind of one of the first things we talked about was that it had to be independent from both your perspective and mine. I think neither of us really felt like we were either in a position to or desired to make a piece of marketing material for LiftPort. I think it kind of wouldn't be as viable a project if that was the angle we tried to take with it. So this is kind of the unvarnished truth as we see it. So yeah, I mean, like you've really been kind of astonishingly open with us. I mean, there have been some in addition to just the technical mishaps and whatnot. I mean, there have been some dark moments. We were filming one day when you got a letter from the Washington State Attorney General's office about somebody who was very angry with you about the Kickstarter awards, and being a person that feels things very deeply, I felt very deeply for you in that moment, because I would not want to be the guy in the room with the camera pointed at me when I got an email like that. And I think that that's like maybe one of the most interesting scenes in the movie, and it's we follow that whole part of the story. So I think that your backers, whether or not they're excited for your continued operations, I'm sure there's at least 3 or 4 people who are angry enough at you that they just wish you would go away at this point. I think all of those people would be interested to see this film, because it's sort of a look at, I mean, I think it's kind of arises from our curiosity. What is LiftPort doing? What do you do
I think
every
also
day?
I also think
Very
that
much.
you hear me?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think sort of my take on it is that, I think we're all professionals, and Ben and I have done another documentary together, and um, I like to think of an independent sort of person, and I think Ben and Michael as well as your team, and I think the issue of um, you have to have that independence, so you have to follow it where it goes. I think, Michael, you've been really open. I think, we've asked, you know, I've been surprised you've never once ducked a single question. Open about letting us sort of be part of that journey, and I think people should hear, which is, you open when they want to hide things, right? And in that way, it's been a very open dialogue, and I think that's going to result in an excellent film. And tells the story of LiftPort's journey, but also has sort of the goal to get a space elevator built in it. That's something that everybody can get behind.
Thank you. I'm glad you see it that way.
It looks like we have some actual questions coming over the transom. Should we try and field some of these?
Sure. I'm going to read the first comment. Bert, I'm sorry we're cutting out. Hopefully the recording is actually going live. We're all in 4 different locations, so I don't know what... I'm not really sure what we can do about that, but we've got the best bandwidth that we've got available. Hopefully you're able to catch us afterwards. First point is from Innovation. By the way, this gal, Kim, was interviewing me literally the day before the Kickstarter campaign launched. So talk about some amazing timing. She was doing an interview for a book of hers, which, by the way, is terrific. I really recommend you take a look at it. It was, Kim, I don't remember what exactly the accolade that you got for it was, but some sort of like top business book from 2013. It's pretty interesting. So thank you always for that initial support. Seth, what's the craziest response you've gotten to a conversation about a space elevator? And also, what's the best? I
feel like we have this question on film.
I think we did. Just so you know, I've known Seth since before I started working on my crazy space elevator. He was a high school student that was interested in commercial space development back in, I think, 2001 or 2002. So, wow, man, you've been on quite the ride with me. Seth's question about what the craziest response is. Well, first thing that always happens is if they are skeptics, then they just shut down. And that's not even a crazy response, that's just a non-response. They literally cannot process a concept this big, in which case we have to move on to another conversation because there is no reaching that person. I learned a long time ago that that skeptics are extraordinarily valuable if you can reach them, if they will listen and think about what you're trying to accomplish. Now, if they're willing to ask a question that they already have a preconceived notion of what the answer is, there's probably no reaching them either. So it's not really so much a crazy questions as much as just a willingness to hear what the answer is, and then go and do your own research. And we always say we don't even have all the questions yet, let alone have all the answers. So the skeptics tend to be actually quite useful. I'm surprised that many of our skeptics have ultimately joined our team. So that's always a big surprise to me when that happens. The best response, I wish I still had this email, but it's a lost email. But it was actually a teenage fan, much like you, once upon a time, that coined the phrase "the biggest thing ever." And he was just excited about what this was, and he was doing a project for school. And I wish I had a copy of his paper. I wish I knew who this kid was or where he was or something like that. But it's kind of lost in the 12 years of doing this. So the guy who coined the phrase "the biggest thing ever," I think that's my favorite response.
When I'm feeling very generous about myself, I like to think that I came up with that independent of him, but I probably just heard you say it at some point.
Sorry, man. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
All right, so John is asking about a new graphene metal composite. I've probably gotten at least 50 messages about this composite, and Dr. Banning is on my to-do list. I'm going to give him a call this week and actually start asking him some interesting questions. If I get interesting answers, I'll let you know. But right now I don't know enough to even speculate.
At the very least, it'll make a great dental floss, right?
I hope it is more than that. I would say, by way of caution, that I have seen at least 4 people reference carbon nanotubes, that they can make carbon nanotubes at arbitrary lengths and arbitrary quantities. That there's been at least 4 people that have come to me in the strictest of confidence and privacy, and they have made claims that they can make extraordinarily long, extraordinarily strong materials, and each time I have investigated them, they have been wrong. In my own experience, we made carbon nanotubes back in 2003, 4, and 5, and we were only able to make like very small quantities of nanotubes. It is extremely hard. Now, I recognize that he's not doing nanotubes, he's doing something slightly different, but I want to remind everybody that the process of taking something from the laboratory experimental stage to a production facility, it is time-consuming, it is expensive, and it is fraught with all sorts of other problems.
Michael's best friend, who's in the film, David, regularly refers to the material necessary for the Earth elevator as unobtainium.
Yeah.
And we got a pretty good chunk of film of him explaining what unobtainium is. He's capable of going into extreme detail on that question.
Good. I refer to it as hunting Bigfoot. Right? It's this thing that some people are sure is out there, but until I can see one in the zoo, I'm going to remain a little skeptical. All right, next. So John, the answer is I don't really know yet. I am going to try and chat with those guys about their new diamond nanothreads. I don't know of anyone that's done anything with titanium, so that's new to me. I'm not aware of that. Robert, one of the backers of the Kickstarter project, so thank you. I appreciate that. I know that you're frustrated, but I'll do the best I can to answer you. First, did you receive perks for your donations? So I think he's talking to you,
Yeah, I guess.
Ben, and I know what the answer is. Do you want to give him the answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have nothing to show for ourselves just yet. I've actually seen some of the backer awards in your office, but
I have something to show for myself.
oh, you do?
Not physically. I should have gotten it from the other room. I might sneak away when you're answering one of the other questions, but I got a card with some of the string.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
This was a couple months ago too.
Yeah. You guys chat for a second. I'm gonna go get something. I'll be right back.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think that I've been kind of thinking about this question a lot since we put up the Kickstarter for our film, because a lot of the people that are particularly frustrated with Michael have commented on our Kickstarter page, and I think that when I backed the LiftPort campaign, I don't think that I backed it for the card. I think I backed it for the experiment. Like, I really wanted to see the experiment happen, and it's hard for me to separate my kind of professional frustration with the experiment not happening yet from my backer frustration, because I'm now trying to make a movie about LiftPort, and so every time the experiment gets delayed, it throws off my all of my scheduling and planning in the rest of my life, because the second Michael schedules this thing, I have to book plane tickets and fly off to wherever it's going to be.
How many times have you come out here? You,
Mahad? At least 6 times over the course of the last 18 or 24 months. But yeah, since we've been officially working on the movie, Mahad and I have each been out there 3 times. And the last time we thought we were there to film the experiment, and it didn't happen. And I think that it's one thing to be remote from the day-to-day operations of LiftPort and be annoyed that it's not happening. It's another thing to be there and see why it's not happening. I think that it's been very frustrating for me, and I'll be honest, and I think Michael knows that. I really want to see this experiment happen, and I don't. I take it pretty seriously that it's still an unchecked box. The card for me is like not quite as important. Honestly, like most of the time when I back Kickstarter projects, I have no use for the poster or T-shirt that I wind up getting. But the stuff for our Kickstarter campaign is actually really cool. So we just added a bunch of rewards today that we announced in an update, but I should probably announce here. We are partnering with Charles Adams, who is the model builder who did a bunch of the work on the Battlestar Galactica reboot that Sci-Fi did a few years ago, and he worked on a film called C, that was C as in the constant speed of light, that was kickstarted a couple years ago. And we're doing like model miniature sci-fi sequences showing a lunar space elevator in action, like to show what it would look like to go to the moon on the system that Michael is building. And the models that we're going to shoot, we're going to have custom made, custom fabricated. Those will be rewards. If you want to own a piece of movie history, you can back us and get one of those models, which makes me extremely jealous of all of the people that are going to be backing at those levels, because I really wish I could just keep them for myself.
And it's important to note that these aren't just tiny miniatures. When we say miniatures, it's a miniature of the actual system. So this is going to be maybe 8 feet, or something that's
it's
pretty
going to be authentically a really cool sculpture to put in your office or whatever. It's going to be completely amazing.
Awesome. Now, Alex, you did get one of these cards, right?
I did, yeah.
So I'm still answering Robert's question here. So these have gone out to hundreds and hundreds of backers, probably about 300 or so, maybe 400. I forget the exact number. And then here's shelves and shelves of T-shirts. I'm not sure how well that's working. And then this week, we have a couple of hundred bracelets. These are going out. I think this is probably going out by this weekend. We got just about everything that we need there. So that'll be kind of the next round of rewards going out the door. They're finished, and so that's kind of the next stage. And then finally, to answer your question about the Attorney General, I did answer. There were 5 or 6 messages, complaints, formal complaints to the Attorney General. I did write a blanket response, and the Attorney General considered that a satisfactory response, and they closed the complaint. So I have, when Ben was here filming, one of the complaints came through. I read it verbatim to him. I offered to send him a copy of it, and I showed him the response, and I showed him the response from the Attorney General. So as far as I'm concerned, I have been acting in good faith steadily for 2 years to accomplish this. There's been deaths in my family. There's been cancer. There's been an amputation. There's been some real hardship in my life, and I'm not going to back down from these complaints or these concerns. I feel very strongly that I'm actually doing the best I can to get this, both the rewards out, the experiment completed, and then the larger goal of actually working towards getting the space elevator on the moon constructed. So I hope that answers your question. I know that's probably not an answer you particularly like, but I stand by it.
Michael,
yeah.
I'll let Mike go.
All right. So I'm a bit of an outsider here. I didn't back your Kickstarter, Michael. Didn't see it. I found out later on from Ben. So I guess, Robert, I'm probably going to answer this from a different perspective than everyone else. I've done a Kickstarter before as well, and fulfillment is always a big challenge for a lot of Kickstarters. And I think putting a lot of faith in the people who are asking for your support. And oftentimes people have the best intentions, and but it's not necessarily their expertise or their business to do things like fulfillment, and a lot of it becomes a shock. I know when I did it, it was an incredible shock to me how much work it was. I mean, luckily in the case of my Kickstarter, it was for my company, so people, there's a lot of dedicated people working to do this stuff and had that support. But from the perspective of the spirit with which you backed the Kickstarter, which is to see the experiment and advance sort of a concept, as an outsider who's been to Seattle 3 times and Michael, we met just the first time and kind of been building relationships since then, but I was new to the concept and new to the LiftPort's work and new to everything. That Michael and his team are under intense pressure to do this experiment and to satisfy the support that they received. Not just because they believe in what they're doing and they believe in they value the belief you gave them, but I think just because they're committed to building a space elevator, and this is a step in that direction. And so I think it's important to separate those two things when you talk about the Kickstarter, the fulfillment of very specific rewards, and the broader spirit of trying to achieve something that's very difficult to do. And sometimes it's not easy to anticipate the roadblocks that come along the way, whether they be personal, whether they be technical, whether they be bureaucratic, like getting space clearance or whatever it may be. And I think every innovator and everyone who's trying to do something always wants to, but things come in the way that you can never anticipate. And so I think, as an outsider, that would be, as somebody who's been there and watched the teams work, there's activity happening, and they're really taking to heart the criticism that's coming across the way. And I think Michael and his team want to satisfy, and they want to put up a very successful experiment. And we're hoping to show that. That was all.
Thanks. Let's move on to so innovation. Kim is asking about the planned timing of the film. What do you envision filming, post-production to be finished, and what are distribution plans? Keep in mind, if I remember right, Kim is in Australia, so you guys got to figure out how to get a film down there for her.
Well, I guess if she backs at any level above $15, she would be able to get access to the film online. So
at 15 or above, yeah.
Yeah, anything above $15 or $15. That's 15 American, obviously. But yeah, so we are actively in post-production. I actually met with our editor this morning, which is scary for me because we are not really done with production. We won't really have all of the footage we need until we have shot the kind of couple of preliminary experiments that they're planning on doing, and then the big experiment. The preliminary experiments are to kind of bench test the robot against a couple of conditions that they can simulate for what it's going to be going through when it goes to 30,000 feet or whatever. My favorite of which is they're going to run it for a while in a commercial freezer to see if it works at the chilly temperatures of high altitude. You wanna show some of the robot pictures now? Oh yeah. You should throw them up on screen, and I'll keep talking. Yeah, so I'm screen sharing so you guys can. It's a little hard to see this. Let me get to the right spot here. Yeah, there we go. But anyways, we are pursuing a pretty aggressive editing timeline that, to some extent we're at the mercy of LiftPort and the fates that affect this robot. But from what I understand, progress is happening with the robot. So, I think we're going to try and have a rough cut in the next couple of months, which will enable us to start shopping the film around to festivals and potential distributors, and then we're hoping, our great hope is that we can finish the film and have it available for people by next summer. A lot of things need to fall perfectly into place for that to happen, and this is one of those projects where that's not necessarily always the case, but we're pretty confident in our ability to deliver. Yeah, let's chat about where things stand here. I'm going to showcase some of these. Everybody can see that. All right, so this is my G+ account of just my photos, just showing my own stuff. This hasn't really been publicly shared, but what we've got here is
you can kind of see in this middle picture. There's four of us: Spencer, Lydia, Salas, and I. And we're down at a makerspace, a hackerspace down in Portland called ADX. ADX is a huge facility, something like 30-some thousand, 25,000 square feet. It has metal fabrication shops. It has wood fabrication shops. It has a computer simulation section, laser cutters, 3D printers, that sort of stuff. And while this robot was primarily designed last year, because of the kind of year that you guys know I've had, for the most part, it didn't have a lot of activity happening on it until really around February or March this year. So even though we had some stuff on CAD and on the drawing board and in our brain, it didn't actually start taking shape until just a few months ago. I can scroll back and show you other earlier images and photos, but this is you guys can see in the top corner, it's September 1st, so this isn't all that out of date. Ultimately, what you have is and you guys have heard me talk about this before, so I'm going to be short about it, but you've got the ribbon winds around the outside edges of the wheels. There's enough friction there that the thing climbs. Now, that would be great if that actually happened, but the reality is we're having a real conflict between the gripping surface, the traction surface, combined with the motors, combined with the longevity of the batteries, combined with the slipperiness, the coefficient of friction of the line itself, the ribbon itself. We have a solution that will climb in about 9 hours, but we're pretty confident that that's a very optimistic 9 hours, and that solution probably won't actually survive final production. So we're still working on design and implementation. Let me go back in time a little ways. These are the guys. That's Ben there, and this is our robot climbing here. We put these on one of the top and the bottom corners just to see what we were up against, and they had so much friction we literally burned them. So that should give you kind of a perspective of what kinds of problems we're dealing with. Balancing this friction problem is it's frankly something we've never had to encounter before. It's a complete redesign from the original robots that we had built, and it's just not working the way we think it's supposed to.
Michael, is that because you're moving from a ribbon-shaped climbing tether to a string-shaped climbing tether?
Correct. In fact, let me move up a little bit. These kids here are at the Space Elevator Conference. We have the Space Elevator Conference the end of August, and that's an annual event. We had about 70 people from around the country and around the world coming to our conference, sponsored by the International Space Elevator Consortium. And each year for the last 4 years, they've been running a robotics competition, and you'll notice that they are using ribbon to climb, and we used ribbon for the first 19 of our robots. But if you look at our new design, it's using a thread. It's less than it's less than 1/8 of an inch thick thread, and so the mechanics of climbing a flat ribbon versus climbing a thread, I mean, they're just different. And so we had a fundamental redesign. It took us 19 robots to figure out how to climb a mile a couple years ago. There's folks on my team that think it's going to take 19 robots to figure out how to climb a thread. I don't think that's the case, but I mean, we've already assembled and disassembled 2 complete robots that didn't work. So that's that. Yeah, there's a big difference between climbing a string and climbing a ribbon, and it sounds simple and it sounds trivial, but it's not. Do you guys want me to screen share anything else, or you want me to jump back in?
Jump back in.
Jump back in. All right.
Yeah. Please do whatever it takes to not have it take 19 robots.
Or if it does take 19, make sure you do 8 a month.
It's going to totally screw up our timeline.
Yeah. I was watching Richard Branson and Peter Diamandis this weekend talking about the 10-year anniversary of the X Prize competition, and in the audience was George Whitesides and Loretta, and people were asking about when is Spaceship One going to fly, and the stock answer, and it doesn't matter whether it's Virgin Galactic or X-Corp or SpaceX or any of those folks, when's it going to fly? The answer is when it's ready. And I know you guys want to fly a whole lot sooner than this, and I was trying really hard to get this thing to fly sooner than this, but it'll fly when it's ready.
Yeah. We have another question from Michael Dowden.
Michael, yeah.
I didn't back for reward, but for scientific progress. I'm very excited about the documentary, so I can get another view into the progress being made on the Space Elevator Challenge. My question is, if you regret using crowdfunding, have the rewards and communication to backers been more trouble than it's worth? Did the Kickstarter campaign make it possible to do experiments, or has it been more of a hindrance? That's a question I've often wondered. I sometimes speculate, Michael, that the Kickstarter is the worst thing that ever happened to you.
No, just the opposite. Just the opposite. Kickstarter was the smartest thing I've ever done on this project. Bar none, without question. Yes, it is much harder than I expected it to be, and yes, it's far more complicated than I anticipated. But at the end of the day, you and I, the 4 of us, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The folks viewing this thing wouldn't be here. The project was dead. I can't stress that enough. The space elevator idea in the 21st century was over on April 13th, 2007. That's when LiftPort originally crashed, and it was simply done. There was no movement on the space elevator. Fortunately, there were 3 nonprofits that really stepped up after the fact and really took on some of the burden. So they kept the embers warm, if you will, but a fire, the way LiftPort was a fire. And so Kickstarter allowed for that fire to get rebuilt, and it's not nearly as big as it used to be. People forget that I was a multimillionaire before I started this thing, and that I became a pauper when everything collapsed. But the Kickstarter money was just barely enough to prime the pump to move the project forward again. So absolutely, Kickstarter was the difference between a live project and a dead project, and I never ever forget that. So no, I don't regret it. I know that there's going to be howls of protest, but I will eventually finish these rewards, and I will eventually finish this robot. And when I do, I'm going to launch another Kickstarter campaign. And the reason for that is not about the money. It was never about the money the first time. It's definitely not going to be about the money the second time. the reason is because the backers. The backers breathed life into this program in a way that nothing else could have. And while we've not approached some of these folks, some of these people have gotten deeply, deeply involved. We have more than 400 technical advisors on this team now, and I would say at least a quarter of them, maybe half, came from the Kickstarter community. So no, it was absolutely worth it. Every step of it was worth it. Even the hard parts keep me on task and keep me on point to I'm so glad that I did this. I'm so glad that these people supported this, because otherwise the project would have been dead.
Good answer. I think Michael Dowden may have backed our campaign as well.
I think he did. I think I saw him and Eric were sending messages back and forth on Twitter saying they couldn't figure out which one to back, so they actually backed both the Skyline and Shoot the Moon. So kudos to those guys.
Yeah,
I'm grateful.
Indeed.
Now, for a bit more serious question, Paul says, have you chosen the elevator music yet?
No, but you know what's funny? If you go to SoundCloud and just put a search for, let me just do that. If you go to SoundCloud and do a search on space elevator music, there is a whole subgenre of folks building space elevator music. It tends to be dancey-trancy style, but there are two bands. There are two bands named. One is called The Space Elevators, and the other one's called Space Elevator. There's at least 4 CDs, and there's hundreds and hundreds of individual songs titled Space Elevator. And you got to know I listen to that stuff, right? Because if they're interested enough to know to name their creative work of art, then I'm going to at least take the time to hear what they have to say. Let me do a quick track. Yeah, there's over 500 tracks.
Wow.
Just at what I'm looking at right now. I'm gonna post the link here. You guys all can follow it afterwards.
And I bet that playlist still isn't long enough for the write-up.
No, it's a heck of a journey. The Earth elevator was supposed to be 6, 7, or 8 days, depending on who you asked. The lunar elevator is, depending on too many variables that we don't have answers to yet, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe 13 days. We absolutely have to do it in less than 14 days because that conforms to the lunar cycle. But yeah, it's a long, dull trip. It's a long, dull trip.
Hopefully they have the technology to beam Netflix up there.
Right. Hopefully they do.
Well, I feel like we're probably cruising into the end of the proceedings for this evening, so I just want to talk a little bit about our film. Mm-hmm. Our film is a documentary feature. We've got footage dating back to, I think, either late 2012 or early 2013, following the LiftPort push toward this big experiment, and it'll kind of encapsulate everything from the Kickstarter through the experiment itself. And one thing that we're really excited about is these kind of sci-fi special effects sequences we're going to be doing, where we show the trip from the Earth to the space elevator and down the elevator to the moon. I think that, and that's what we're actually doing the Kickstarter for, to raise the funds we need to shoot those sequences. I think it'll be kind of a really unique thing that, you know, your average documentary wouldn't have the resources to do. You know, if we had gone to traditional film investors and asked for money to do this, they would have laughed in our faces. So we really need the community to kind of rally around this to get it done. And so far, we've just been completely blown away with the amount of people who have been willing to part with, you know, $15 or $25 to get a ticket to the film. And this is, you know, given kind of a crappy Kickstarter video that we put up and a pretty old cut of our teaser trailer that's embedded in the page. When I log off of this tonight, Michael is going to click save on the video of this Hangout so that it's going to be saved for posterity. I am going to flip live our new Kickstarter video, which I'm very pleased with. It shows a lot more of the footage that we've shot more recently, including some pretty interesting stuff with Michael and David, his best friend, who is kind of the roboticist in chief at LiftPort. But yeah, you know, this movie is so much more interesting than I ever could have anticipated it would wind up being, and we really appreciate the support of all the people who tuned in who already donated, and we would love the support of the people who've tuned in that haven't yet, and you know, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. It's a lot like LiftPort's campaign. It's about showing that there's a big crowd of people that are interested in this film for us. So, anything you can part with, you know, $15 is all it takes to get to watch the movie in the comfort of your own home. And
Ben also forgot to mention that if we get up to 400 backers by midnight on Thursday, we get another $1,000 from a very generous anonymous backer.
Yeah, we had an anonymous backer last week who said if we could get to 200 by the end of the day Tuesday, we would get $2,000, and it worked. People got really excited about it. So we have another backer who was inspired by that and promised to increase their donation by $1,000 if we can go to 400 by the end of Thursday. So. We really need your help now more than ever because it could mean $1,000.
Yeah. Just one last thing in case there was some people that were curious. I am not a producer on this film. I have no financial interest in it, no supporting interest. I backed it at the $150 level because that's the reward that I wanted. But there were some folks who were kind of a little concerned that I had a little more influence over this thing than I do, and I just want to be very clear. I think you have some great rewards, but I'm not that person that's dangling $1,000. I hope you get it, and I want to see you guys get it, but I'm not that guy. All right. Anything else? Alexis, you got anything? Any last minute? Ben, you got anything? Mahad, you guys have all said what you need to say.
I guess to your point that you're not a producer on the film, everything's going to be in the film, warts and all. You know.
The only thing I want from y'all, and I said this to Ben like day one back the beginning of the year. The only thing I do want an IMDb credit. As a technical consultant, I'm a big movie nerd. Like you guys know that I'm a big movie nerd. I want an IMDb credit. That was my only request. That was my only negotiating point for this film.
Yeah, and ending our ability to edit IMDb, which I think we'll probably end up having to get an IMDb Pro account with the post-production funds. We will fulfill your dream of having an IMDb credit.
Right on. All right, I'll do the hard part, get an elevator. You guys do the other hard part, get a movie up, and give me my credit. Right. Okay, cool. All right. Anything else? I'm gonna stop this broadcast, and I'm gonna do what I can to post it to my YouTube channel. So cross your fingers.
One more thing.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, everyone who's watching and everyone who may watch later on YouTube, we're all accessible via Twitter, Facebook, personal emails, whatever. If you have any more questions, please reach out, or the comments on the Kickstarter page. There's been people who had questions and asked, we'll answer as honestly as possible, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, I want you guys to each post your links on the YouTube on the live chat page as soon as we're done here. Okay.
Yeah.
So post links to the campaign, to yourselves, that kind of stuff. Okay. All right. All right. Bye, guys. Thanks a lot.
Later, everybody.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Stop broadcast.